Hey guys, I felt it was time that I make a video about the comment section of the Scourge vs Hunter video that I of course recommend all of you see first before you start watching this video to get a better understanding and actually fully grasp what's going on here. Right, let us begin with one of the common theories that was floating around the comment section. So I would often see comments that the Unbidden are the hunters that are chasing the Scourge. Now, whilst it's not entirely impossible, it just does not really make sense for me. If we take a look in the comment section of the Scourge video, there are many people saying that the hunters are the Unbidden, but this really just doesn't make sense. Where are the Unbidden chasing the Scourge across the universe? The Scourge are meant to be a mere refugee force, a tiny fraction of a once great empire. The Unbidden go to galaxies to harvest it. Why would they ever need to chase an empire? It just doesn't make sense. If the Unbidden have difficulties with taking the player galaxy, then how would they even stand a chance of taking the once mighty Scourge galaxies that used to span vast swathes of the universe or whatever? It just doesn't really seem to add up. Now, a commenter called Tamamo, whatever, I think it's a Japanese anime kind of name. They proposed an alternative to this. Perhaps the force that we are facing of the Unbidden is a tiny comparison to the actual main force that they have, because they do seem to have the ability to summon an unlimited amount of ships. This is correct because if you look in the game code, you can see that whilst the speed of reinforcements do slow down over time, they can theoretically always spawn in more fleets. The only problem is, so can the Scourge, meaning that we can never truly understand which has the larger fleet size. The only glimpse we can get into the Unbidden fleet is from a very small event chain that involves a science ship accidentally going through a portal into the Unbidden dimension. They only get a brief glimpse of this external dimension, but what they see is stacks and stacks of ships waiting for something. Now, they might not have actually seen the Unbidden fleet because, as we know, there are multiple empires like the Unbidden, but it does give us the idea that the extra-dimensional armies are almost infinite in size. So yes, the Unbidden could be infinitely powerful. The only problem is the portal makes it seem like they are unlimited to how many ships they can bring into the galaxy. So whilst the Unbidden are infinite in their size, they are limited as to who they can attack. We also need to remember that the Unbidden need the jump drive technology to be researched to get into your galaxy. The Scourge are biological beings that go through the gaps between the galaxies, so they will have never needed to research jump drive technology. So how would the Unbidden have even encountered the Scourge? Another thing we need to remember is that the base game doesn't actually allow you to have more than one crisis spawn in any one game, so the Scourge are actually never ever going to meet the Unbidden according to the base game. So it just doesn't really make sense, but I suppose perhaps if it's meant as some kind of external lore or whatever. Someone else mentioned that perhaps it's not the Unbidden the hunters are fleeing from, but one of the other empires that are also like the Unbidden. Now, if you don't know who these guys are, then I recommend watching my Unbidden lore video as we compare the strengths between each of these empires. This is entirely possible, but the same problems that I mentioned above still exist as before. Anyway, that's my stance on them. Let's move on to one of the fun ones. This one was created by commenter Javier Calvelo. He comes up with the idea that what if the hunters only exist in the mind of the Porphyrion, a nightmare implanted in their mind by psionics as a species that wanted to survive, to make the monsters go away, completely unaware that the horrors they have now unleashed on the universe. Now, this is an absolutely amazing idea, and it would work perfectly for the developers if they want to explain the hunters without actually having to add them in the game. I am fully aware that making new ships and events costs a lot of money for the devs, so unless the hunters themselves are added as DLC, I can't find a better way to add them into the game. The story behind this is that the Scourge are an attacking species. They're attacking a group of psionics that have somehow the ability to change the minds of those fighting them, And so they have implanted the idea of a non-existent monster called the Hunters in the mind of the Scourge to make them leave, perhaps telling them they're also a refugee force, getting them to run away. Of course, this has likely resulted in the death of thousands and thousands of galaxies at the hand of the fleeing Scourge, who are simply running from a fairy tale. But it's a really interesting story of, I don't know, something that's just gone wrong. The next comment is from Venzi Porigi. It's a very splendid idea. It says, don't forget the Scourge exclusively use biotech and have been on the run for a long time. I propose that these hunters are actually doing something entirely different with the galaxies they conquer. I propose that the hunters are terraforming entire galaxies to suit their needs. Now this is similar to the Scourge, who terraform entire galaxies into the Scourge worlds that we can't inhabit. So perhaps the hunters are doing the opposite. Now, he then goes into a bit of extra detail here. Perhaps they are meant to be a mirror of our civilizations, just a bunch of mortals in metal ships armed with ambition, knowledge, and a drive to expand. Psionic civilizations get the edge when dealing with the Scourge. Synthetic will have one, with the new crisis replacing AI revolts. Another expansion will introduce something similar for those following the path of genetic engineering. Well, that's also actually featured in the AI. Those that reject these paths and embrace their mortal imperfection deserve something similar. I suspect the hunters will serve as this. Our civilization as a player character is a rising power, constantly expanding, never slowing. We grow, we have defeated terrors, countless precursors have fallen. We have rivaled the power of ancient empires in a fraction of time that they actually took to rise. We've seen a war in heaven and beaten both sides, so there is a reason why gods always fear mortals. Well, first of all, thanks for taking the time to write all that, and I must say that is all entirely possible. The Scourge are incredibly biological and seem to be working towards that, so it is very likely that they are running from the opposite. In fact, it would make good in terms of a story. Now, your proposition is that the hunters are terraforming worlds into non-Scourge worlds, and so the hunters are basically just another player empire. I propose an even stronger opposite. What if the hunters are just machines? That would make them the exact opposite of the Scourge and would also make them a good match against them. They are converting the worlds into machine worlds, making them unusable for the Scourge and forcing them to leave. This would also link in nicely with the brand new DLC we're coming out, which will add a lot to robotic empires, including the ability for robots to convert worlds into machine worlds. Now, my favourite idea comes from the commenter Genghis Khan. Yes, that's right, Genghis Khan himself has a YouTube account. He comes up with the idea that the hunters are simply just him, travelling from galaxy to galaxy in a horse-shaped cruiser. Now, this is everything I want the hunters to be. If Paradox could add this as an April Fool's, it would make my day. Imagine millions and millions of tiny horses flying through your solar system, pillaging everything in their path. That would be just perfect. Anyway, I really love reading all of your comments on every single video, and I'm sure there are a lot more entertaining theories out there, so feel free to put them in the comment section of this video, no matter how strange it might sound. And remember to look at others' comments, because you might discover something interesting. A big thanks to my Patreons for assisting in my quest for an independent Northern England to rise up against the South. Well, you know, it's just a bit of a pipe dream. Well, have a splendid day, chaps. I will see you in the next one.